Sup guys, Beyond here. We're taking a look at a Demonology kit today, a 21 Plaguefall actually. It's a pretty easy week, so we figured we'd push a little bit higher than we usually go, just for fun. We're not really like great or anything, so don't expect good gameplay here. We're mostly taking a look at this just to see what Demo does in keys, how he can do damage, where his strong points are, and also what not to do, because I'm probably going to make a lot of mistakes. Like this first invis part here is not very clean, for example, but what can you say? It gets the job done. Now, our healer is not as fortunate, and he goes down here, and he's trolling a little bit here, but he's gonna join us shortly. Now, we're starting off with the incinerator here, and we're skipping most of this first part of the dungeon, because, as I said, it was 21 fortified, right? It's gonna be a little bit rough pulling on that trash, so we decided to skip it. In terms of talents and so forth, I'm playing a pretty standard demo build with Grimoire. I am doing both Dreadlash and From the Shadow, so full dogs build, because it's fortified after all, right? And even if it's not fortified, I would say you should probably play the dogs build either way, because it is just pretty damn close on single target as well, actually. So when you're pulling this guy in your normal keys here, this first incinerator here, I would definitely recommend tyranting him, and if you tyrant him, depending on how quickly he's gonna die, because now he died pretty slow, it was a 21, right? So I tyranted a bit early, I didn't save my imps. If you tyrant him really early, you can actually save like 20 imps, or even more if you do a good tyrant, and you will have 20 imps for this pull here. I only have 9 imps, but it's still good enough. I should have dogsed before I did it Implosion, but for some reason I didn't. I'm really bad. And yeah, our Havoc DH and our Hunter is just destroying this ad, so I don't really have to do much here. And I make a terrible mistake of not popping defensives or going into the the fucking Spiritling for the bursting, so I end up going down. But it's not the end of the world. Our healer can rest me here. So I also realized I hadn't taken any health stones from my own soul well. It's a pretty sad mistake. When you're playing demo in keys, you're basically looking to keep combat rolling as much as possible, right? But depending on the dungeon or depending on your tank, it might be very difficult to keep combat rolling as much as possible. And sometimes you're gonna have to do either very suboptimal tyrant setups, or you're gonna have to hold for long periods of time to make sure you have everything for a boss, etc. Here, I do make the decision to pump and pop tyrant on this ad here, because I know that we're gonna pull the other ad. I can send my pets onto that one, and if we take long enough to kill this ad, then I might have tyrant back for boss here, but this might have been a little bit greedy here. You can see we're killing this ad really quickly. Luckily, our healer decides to first die to that frontal here, and then in a second you'll see our big boy Hunter also die to the frontal. So we're actually wasting a bit of time here, which is really good for me because I needed my CDs back for boss. Now, this is gonna work out more or less perfectly here. I am just about having tyrant back for boss. And something you can do if you end up having to either hold tyrant a bit because you need to pull something more, or you maybe have to pop it on us in a suboptimal time with no ads or something like that. As you can see here, for example, I'm going into this boss with 7 imps behind me here. If I wanted to, I could do a quick greedy tyrant setup here, where I would do like soul rot dogs hand tyrant or something like that, and those 7 imps would not disappear. So I would maybe get the 10 imp or a 9 imp tyrant off there without much effort, and I would get it on CD quickly. Now, since our party is trolling hardcore here, it's fine because I'm actually going to be able to wait for my Grimoire as well. So this actually ended up working out even better for me. Now I'm going to have full CDs for boss. I'm not going to have to do a weird suboptimal tyrant setup. Now, I do make a pretty bad mistake here. I just make the call to go for a suboptimal tyrant setup where I just basically get 7 imps off, and I do it quicker instead of waiting for the proper one where I set up my Grimoire first. This is going to mean suboptimal trinket use. This is going to mean lower imps than I could have gotten. It's just going to be an overall a lot lower DPS for the only gain of having the tyrant back a little bit quicker. So sure, if I get another tyrant off here that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise, might be worth it, but otherwise probably a pretty bad play and something I would recommend you guys to stay away from. On this boss, banish on that big ad is really useful. Now we have a hunter, so freezing trap and banish doesn't really matter which one it is, but if you're playing in a group with less utility, always banish the big ad, and then you could try to like Shadow Fury the small ones, but usually it's gonna be a little bit tough landing all that. So we can see here I am getting a second tyrant off, but the problem is I would have gotten this tyrant off either way, so that big holding in the start didn't really matter. And you can see here as well, I'm playing terribly. I'm not really setting up for my tyrant properly, so I will get a very small tyrant, 6 imps. He is out though, and he will finish off this boss. So I did actually, maybe I wouldn't have gotten that tyrant off if I wouldn't have played it so quickly at the start. So more, it could have been worth it actually. One thing I like about Plaguefall for Demo is that it's a lot of like small packs with few ads in them, and sure, Demo isn't great at that, but at least that means that your tyrant is going to do some good priority damage, because Ath on these small packs here is not going to do a lot of damage, and Destro is similarly like not that great on like 4 targets or anything like that. So I don't know, I feel like Demo is the best bet in Plaguefall for sure, especially since the bosses kind of need to die as well, so your boss damage is going to matter a lot here as Demo. Even though it's fortified, the bosses do live quite long on 21s, right? So having that extra bit of boss damage is good. You can see here I have everything up that I'm holding for the next pack, and this is something you end up doing pretty often as Demo in dungeons, because realistically you just can't keep combat rolling that much, especially not if it's like bursting like it is now. So especially as well, the higher you go, the more suboptimal that is going to become. But here would be a scenario where if, for example, my dogs were still up there, if I hadn't let those dogs fall, then maybe I could have done like a Soul Rot Grimoire Tyrant setup with those 6 imps and those dogs, because that's going to be a very quick, efficient Tyrant that's going to come out at the very start of the pack, where everything lives here. Now you can see I'm gonna Tyrant at the middle of this, or when the pack is at like half HP, which if the key level was lower than 21 here and it was not fortified, then those mobs would probably have died by now, right? So that late Tyrant is pretty sketchy sometimes, and ramping at the start of every single pack can end up hurting your DPS a lot. So something I would recommend, if you, especially if you're playing lower keys, is if you have 6 imps out and dogs already, or if you have dogs available, then you can just do dogs, Soul Rot dogs Tyrant, or like Soul Rot hand Tyrant if you already have the dogs out, as you're pulling a pack, and that will probably allow for some better cooldown timings. Now, you're still playing Demo, right? It is a pretty awkward spec, so further or later, or sooner or later down the key, you're probably gonna end up misaligning your cooldowns a little bit, or maybe not misaligning them, but having to use them at a very awkward time, or having to hold them a long time. And that happens to most specs, right? But you feel it especially on Demo. Here you can see I did a Tyrant that wasn't the best, but I did apply that principle of, I had 12 imps out, so I was like, fuck it, I'll just Tyrant with these 12 imps, and I'll not worry about my dogs falling off, I'll just go with them. If I was even more aggressive on the play, I probably could have kept the dogs alive. You can see it resulted in that massive 23 imp implosion there on that pack, so worked out pretty well. Another good thing about Demo in these Plaguefalls is that you end up killing a lot of congealed slimes, which needs to die, right? It's a priority target, so Tyranting those can be a pretty good way of saving some time for the party. Now, something that I sometimes just not do because I'm lazy or because I'm stupid, is that you always obviously want to dogs before you implosion, because you apply the debuff if you're playing Dreadlash, or sorry, From the Shadows. So if you have like a massive implosion, especially going into a pack, your imps are not gonna fall off if you do a dogs first. So you always want to do like a hard cast dogs into sending all of those like 20 imps in, if you have dogs up. And even better if you have a dogs proc, then you can do like dogs hand implosion maybe even, or something. I understand you being like, you're always a little bit scared of those imps falling off, right, and disappearing, in which case you lose the whole implosion. So I'm usually not too greedy trying to squeeze in too many globals, right? You usually can only do like 1, 2, maybe 3 globals if you're really fucking greedy. But it also obviously depends on how long the imps have been out for. If you are approaching that like really high threshold of them already being out for like 30 seconds or something, then I would definitely just recommend you doing 1 global. But if you pull quickly, they've only been out for like 10-20 seconds, then there's no way they're going to disappear in like 2 globals. So taking those 2 globals to send out a pair of dogs, send out the soul rot if you know you're going to tyrant or something like that, can actually be really useful, can save you a lot of DPS. And it can also save the tank some precious globals to get aggro, because if you roll up to a pack and you send a fucking 20 imp implosion into the pack without any globals before it, then the tank is going to lose aggro 100%. So make sure you do that. Here I tried to tyrant the little congealed slime, didn't work out too well. I also didn't really quite know what we were pulling next, so I couldn't really send my tyrant in to attack it sooner. If I would have just been a Chad and gone for this parried mob here, then I would have ended up doing a pretty good tyrant setup here actually. Now it ended up being really scuffed because I lost like a couple of seconds of my tyrant uptime, which is something you never want to do as demo, although it does happen in case if you want to like tyrant on CD every time. And the reason you want to tyrant on CD every time, right, is because if you miss a tyrant, then if you're gonna do it late, then suddenly you're gonna end up wasting some Grimoire and some trinket uptime, because you're gonna have to wait for your next tyrant before you can Grimoire and trinket. And that's why you want a tyrant on CD. Now, if you don't manage the tyrant on CD, it could be better holding that entire tyrant until for another like minute basically, or half a minute, until you have Grimoire and trinket again. But that can also lead to some weird scenarios, which I'll discuss later. Here, I'm actually doing that play where I thought I had 6 imps. I was like, fuck it, I'll just go Dogs, Grimoire, Soul Rot, Tyrant. But I didn't have enough haste, or the imps had been up too long in beforehand, right? So they actually disappeared. I ended up only getting a 3 imp Tyrant, which is sad as fuck, but still I got the cooldown out quickly, which sometimes can matter more than the number of imps in dungeons. I'm not advising it though. It was probably a bad play. You can't say 100% though. As for the powers, if you are playing a high tyrannical key, I would actually advise you to pick a Necrotic Dagger pretty much every time, because Necrotic Dagger is just really good single target damage, and it really helps on those tyrannical bosses. Now Demo doesn't apply it extremely well, but it's still gonna do a lot of damage. Same with Plumage. If you feel like you need Plumage, Demo applies it decently well, right? But compared to some classes like Frost Mage or something that is actually gonna shred with Plumage, then Demo is actually really bad. So just for pure DPS, I tend to gravitate towards the stats. The Signet of Bowstring can be really good if you have like Explosive Weak or Spiteful even. But normally I just go for double stat. Depends also which stat you have as your highest one out of Crit and Mastery, right? Because Mastery tends to be a little worse in keys, considering that a lot of your damage in keys is actually Implosion, and it's also maybe Hand of Gul'dan to a certain extent, Demon Bolt, right? So getting Mastery is going to buff your Tyrant a lot, but sometimes you might want to gravitate more towards an AoE build, and that's where Crit comes in, right? Because Crit works on your Implosion, but it also works on your Tyrant fairly well, even though Crit is maybe not the stat you want really for a Tyrant, since you already have the Ruby. But I usually go for double Crit just to do a little bit more AoE damage. We are struggling here again because people in the group are dying, and we can't get out of combat because my pets were attacking a canister. It's a little sad, but we'll get people rest here. And you can see here we have 8 deaths already. It's been a fairly slow run. We haven't done any MDI pulls or anything like that. We haven't gone big. We haven't really pushed boundaries. And yeah, the timer is not looking great at this point. But it's not looking too bad either. I mean, we've got 22 minutes left. Could definitely be worse. And as I said before, like, Plaguefall is a pretty lenient dungeon. Here I'm doing a terrible tyrant. This tyrant I'm doing because I'm predicting this mob to die quickly, right? And you don't really want to waste tyrant uptime. For example, if I were to tyrant now at 50% and I thought this mob would die quickly, then maybe my tyrant would only get out like half of his casts, and then the mob would die, and my tyrant would just sit around here waiting. Now, it ended up dying a lot slower than I thought, so I just wasted like a really bad tyrant. I could have gone 6 imps on that tyrant probably, but whatever. You learn as you play, right? And it is actually a really good strat, especially for lower keys, because most of the time someone in your group is going to shred that ad, right? And he's going to make your tyrant really sad if you summon your tyrant too late. That also really applies to like the tormentors. Usually the tormentors can be really rough, because you maybe roll up to your tormentor, you don't really have tyrant, and then when you have him, you want to ramp a little bit, you get him out, and maybe the boss is already at like 50% HP or 40% HP, and someone in your group is pumping, and your tyrant is only getting out half of the casts, and then suddenly you have nothing to cast on, so you can't lower the CD anymore, and your tyrant is like 1 minute cooldown left when you leave the tormentor with the power, and suddenly you're pulling boss, and you have no grimoire, you have no tyrant for a minute, and you're going to be so useless, and you're just like thinking to yourself, why the fuck did I even tyrant that tormentor? I should just held it. So be a little bit careful about tyranting tormentors late, especially if you're pulling boss, especially on low keys. Here I tyrant these 2 ads, even though my grimoire is 10 seconds left, and there you see an example of that like pretty bad misalignment of CDs, where I have to hold something because we're running or because we're not pulling, and then I have the option of either waiting 10 seconds for my grimoire, for my trinket, or sending the tyrant right away and getting another tyrant for this mini boss up here maybe, and then I can send the grimoire on him. But here you will quickly spot one of these scenarios that I was talking about earlier, where I'm gonna roll up to a mini boss here, and I have tyrant in 35 seconds. What do I do here? Like, I kind of want to tyrant this guy, right? Because I want to help my group kill this guy quickly, and it's a 21. But I have to start ramping now basically if I want to kill him, and I do decide to tyrant here, I'm pretty sure. So that would mean soul rotting now. Yeah, grimoire, soul rot, dogs, and I know it's gonna be like a somewhat of a mini tyrant, so I don't do all of it because I want to get the cooldown back quicker. But my tyrant comes back here at 40%. He comes up. I have pets on passive, which is absolutely hard trolling. That's why I'm doing like no damage here. Absolutely cringe, but I fixed it now at least before boss, so it wasn't that bad. And yeah, I have 1 minute left on tyrant. Now, thankfully, I think we have another ad pack to kill before boss, but otherwise this would be a pretty rough situation to be in. I picked the stats here again, and I think someone in my group is gonna do a spicy pull here, and we are gonna kill the boss with this pack, which again, you know, you can do that, so I'm not flaming us, but definitely a little bit spicy. Definitely a little bit spicy. Yeah, I don't have tyrant, so I can't really help kill these mobs even. I'm getting it soon here. And something I did there as well was being at 5 shards and still casting another Shadow Bolt, because I knew I was gonna delay my ramp a little bit. I wanted to fish for a dog proc or something, just to delay that soul rot a little bit. Maybe not the best to do, but yeah, I'm struggling a little bit to dodge these things here, trying to kill the ads, interrupt burning strain. Our hunter died as well, and I haven't battle rested him this entire time, which is incredibly troll now that I rewatched this. I hope maybe we don't have a battle. No, we did have battle rest. Okay, well, I should probably get reported, but whatever, I can't battle res apparently. Standing in the haste thing to get haste if you want that, but it doesn't really matter too much outside of my tyrant window, and I don't want to overload our healer for no reason though. Although I did pop my defensive and goes down, went to stand there. Now, here comes my tyrant window lining up with this bomb that needs to die here, which is pretty nice. And here I try to do a little bit more of a proper setup with Shadow Bolt, Dogs, and then I have 3 hand procs here that I go into. I think I end up doing a 9 imp one here. Now I did end up doing a full 11 imp Tyrant actually. The bomb is already dead, but now my Tyrant can pump on the Icus guy. So actually a really clean setup there. Getting 11 imps in dungeons can sometimes be really difficult with all the movement and stuff you have to do. But there was really pog with the Lust, and my Tyrant is gonna pump as a result, and we're kind of gonna kill this boss. Our Hunter died again. Apparently we did have another battle rest, although I didn't use mine again, which is a little bit reportable. I really need to start using Soulstone apparently. I should probably get a weak or something. Here I don't really have a window for this bomb, but I did banish the little congealed slime, and that's one of the reasons that Warlock is so useful in Plaguefall as well, right? You can banish the slime on this boss, you can banish the slime on the first boss, and you have that really strong single target profile if you're playing Demo. I think I'm gonna Tyrant this boss once more here. I don't really end up getting the 12 imp Tyrant. You can get 12 imp Tyrants if you have enough haste combined with not having Vile Fiend. And getting a Dog's proc can actually make you do some nice 12 imp Tyrants with this talent build, but it is pretty tough to pull off, especially if you don't have Lust. Here is another part where I make 2 pretty obvious mistakes. First of all, I didn't send my dogs out when I had the proc. Very awful. And then I make the decision to Tyrant this pack, which is, I mean, it's not bad, right? I had my Tyrant up. You want to use your CDs as much as possible. The pack is not a small pack. I mean, it's a 21 fortified. The pack needs to die, right? And I end up doing like a decent amount of damage to that pack as well. But the problem is that when you're the single target pumper in the group, you kind of want to make sure that you actually end up using your cooldowns on the single target elements of the dungeon, because otherwise you are just going to become a liability to the group, right? If you bring 2 AoE guys and 1 single target guy, and the single target guy never has CDs for the bosses, then he's trolling, right? He's there to pump on the bosses, he's not there to pad on the AoE packs. So what I should have done there was probably to hold CDs for this Sogadon guy here. He takes a long time on a 21 fortified. I mean, fortified doesn't matter, but on a 21, he takes a long time, and I need to make sure I have a Tyrant for him. Now, I end up getting the Tyrant back here, and I make the decision that fuck it, this guy is living long enough for me to Tyrant again here. So it ended up maybe being a fine decision after all, but then again, this is a 21, right? Normally this guy wouldn't die this slowly, and here you can see he's actually dying before my Tyrant expiring. He dies with my Tyrant 3 seconds left, right? That's 3 casts on my Tyrant that could have gone into Sogadun, could have gone into a damage target that I just missed because I was a little bit greedy using it before. Although overall I did get most of my Tyrant off, so probably still a good decision. Now I'm also gonna roll up to this guy with 20 imps. I don't think it's gonna matter because he's not gonna use his stealthlings until now, and all of my imps have disappeared already, so I only get a 9 imp one, but still. Implosion is actually, if you use Implosion well, if you use your Tyrant's imps well after your Tyrant expires, if you plan for that well, Implosion is actually a huge damage ability, and it's not only gonna do a lot of your overall, but it's actually really useful to deal with a lot of the like ads in a lot of dungeons that needs to die quickly, stealthlings here, the slimes at the start, just priority mobs, or just really strong on AoE in general. And how to use Implosion effectively can be a little dependent on the situation as well, right? Because either you can do just a simple hand Shadowbolt Implosion rotation where you will Implosion with 6 imps, so you do hand Implosion basically, and that works, but I find it to be slightly ineffective, honestly, and slightly inefficient, because what you could do if you have a lot of Demonology procs and some haste is you could start playing around more of a psychic playstyle where you pool to 5 shards and a couple of Demobolt procs, and then you do like hand, Demobolt, hand, Demobolt, hand. You have 9 imps, and then you can implode those imps with 1 implosion, and then you can restart that cycle again. That means that you're saving a couple of implosion casts, right? Because every cast of implosion is kind of like a cast of eviscerate on a rogue, right? You want every cast of implosion to have as many imps or combo points, combo imps, as possible. And if you're doing implosions with just 6 combo imps, then why would you do that when you can do it with 9 combo imps, right? Then you're kind of playing it wrong. So similarly, if we can get like 12 combo imps, then and spend them with a big combo implosion, then that's going to be really, really good for our damage, and it's going to save us some globals, which overall nets us obviously more damage. So that's something to keep in mind. I usually implode with 9 because it's the most consistent. It's something that I can pull off pretty much every time. Although sometimes you're obviously going to have to implode with 6 imps. Sometimes you can implode with 12 imps if you play it well. Here I miss my dogs on the boss, never ever do that. That's absolutely hard trolling, especially when you're playing this dogs build that I'm playing right now with Dreadlash and From the Shadows. Not only is your dogs a lot of your damage, but your dogs apply that From the Shadows debuff, which makes your tyrant pump more. Here I don't pop trinket apparently. Like I'm trolling pretty hard here. I'm guessing this was because I didn't have trinket quite at the right time, and if you're only getting half of your tyrant window trinketed, then it might be worth saving for the next one. However, that is also going to misalign my trinket with my Grimoire, which is something you definitely don't want to do. So yeah, this is pretty troll. Now you can also see here, for example, I'm not imploding these brood assassins, and that's because we really only need to single target the boss, right? And this is an issue of padding, right? Because if our grouping can kill those assassins without me needing to implode them, then I shouldn't implode them, because my implosion does, or my imps do more single target if I just keep them focused on the boss. So in a group like this where someone else kills them, I would never implode. Now, if you are in a group where like no one can kill those ads and they actually need to die, then yeah, imploding those ads would be pretty good. You can also, like, dogs would work on those ads, right? So just dogging them alone and not imploding is maybe enough, depending on how high of a key you're doing and if it's tyrannical. But yeah, just be mindful of whether you're implosioning or not, because implosioning will lose you a lot of single target damage actually if you're doing it too much. Similarly, if you're fighting like a 3 mob pack or something, I would actually not implode at all, because not only is it sending your imps in to die when they could be doing single target damage, but you're also wasting globals on implosion that you don't need to waste on implosion at all. And the most important part, if you're doing like hand, demon bolt, shadow bolt, hand, and then implode, then sure, those imps that are about to expire, those are not gonna waste any damage theoretically, or not much damage at least. But the 3 imps that you just summoned that all still have like massive amounts of energy left to cast with, they are gonna die instantly from that implosion. So especially if you're on like 3 targets where the damage between wild imps fireball and implosion is actually gonna be pretty close, then I would suggest not imploding. I would definitely implode on 5 targets. On 4 targets it's probably also worth it, especially if you're doing like a big a 9 imp implosion on 4 targets is definitely worth it. Even 6 imp implosions on 4 targets is probably still a higher DPS overall. Although it can obviously fuck your group if you need priority damage. I would suggest maybe leaving them for single target. Now, I've talked so much that this key is already almost done. I haven't really spent too much time talking about our strategy or anything like that, or route. We just did a pretty standard route. We ended up having to pull a little bit extra there with that tentacle before. We also pulled the slimes here, down here for the haste buff on the boss. No, I'm sorry, we didn't do that yet. We're about to do that. And yeah. When it comes to how viable Demo is in keys, I would say it's actually pretty strong. It has a couple of different builds. Mostly this dogs build, I would say, is the just strongest versatile overall build that you play on every week. And the strengths lie obviously in tyrannical weeks, because on tyrannical weeks that single target boss damage that you bring will be very, very, very appreciated for most keys. And on tyrannical weeks, sometimes the tank can pull really, really big, which means that your uncapped AoE also comes into play. And although your uncapped AoE is not going to be as strong as like afflictions, it's still going to be pretty decent. And especially your like consistent uncapped AoE is pretty good with dogs and implosion. Your burst is not going to be as strong unless you have like a massive implosion saved up from a tyrant or something like that, and the pack dies quick. Then your burst is pretty decent. But otherwise, consistent uncapped AoE, which can be pretty useful. I've done some like pretty damn good damage in Ardenwell section of the other side, for example, and other pulls like House of Torment where you have massive pulls. Now, you're still obviously not going to do as much damage as AF. And that's also where the difference between AF and Demo lies here. If you are able to pull trash on top of bosses, if you are good enough to just like do the more MDI style pulls where you pull like 5 mobs or even 10 mobs on top of a boss or more, then AF is gonna be incredibly good. Like that's where AF lock shines, because you can seed all of those mobs, you will do tremendous boss damage with Haunt, you will actually pump on both single target and AoE, and you will do way more damage than Demo ever could do on that scenario. But if you are a more like a mere mortal like the rest of us, and you don't really pull 10 mobs onto every single boss you push, then Demo gains a lot of value, because Demo's single target is really strong and its AoE is not that far behind Afflictions after all, right? Its burst AoE might be pretty far behind. Like if you are playing on that 2-minute profile where you do a big pull every 2 minutes with AF, then yeah, you're gonna pump, and even just every minute with Soul Rot, AF does a lot of damage. But if your packs take less than a minute, if you're pulling in quick succession, small pulls, then I think Demo is gonna perform just as well or better than AF. And we can see that here in Plaguefall as well, right? Even in Plaguefall 21, we have to pull very small. We have to go pretty slowly because of just the nature of the dungeon and how dangerous the mobs are, and also the layout. You can't really go very big. There aren't many big pulls. So playing Demo would be a lot better than playing, for example, F. Destro is something I haven't experimented with at all, really. I have seen it played in the MDI, obviously. They did some Infernal builds and stuff like that, but I feel like it's very strong for like 3-minute profiles with Guardian Druid maybe, and you would do insane pulls that last a long time on maybe high fortified keys. But then again, like at that point you're already so good at the game that you don't really need to be watching this guide. So for the mere mortal players, I don't think Destro is that great in keys, although obviously it's not far behind either. It's not like Blizzard is bad at balancing or anything. All the Warlock specs currently are pretty compatible, and they're all pretty viable, honestly, I would say as well. The problem is you're not really a hunter, a Windwalker monk, a mage. You know, you don't have that insane burst. You do have that burst on a 2-minute profile if you're playing Affliction though on AoE, but who likes spamming seeds for 8 seconds straight, guys? Come on, we're not that interesting pumping that we're willing to sacrifice our brain power for it. When you're doing these high keys as well, making sure to use defensives on stuff like Infectious Rain. You can see we link Darkness, and I pop Unending Resolve there. My entire party dies to Tentacle Slams, and I decide to ramp rather than battle resing to save my Grimoire, which is a respectable choice, I would say, considering the boss is only at 2% here. And we are gonna end up timing this key with 1 minute 50 seconds left, and we died a lot of times as well. Now, the overall damage isn't that great, obviously, but you also got to consider that it is Plaguefall, right? We aren't pulling that big, so the overall damage is always going to look a bit lower than some other keys. I did end up getting outpumped by Havoc Demon Hunter and Hunter. I don't think it's that unlikely that you end up getting outpumped. Now, if I played better, I could obviously have done more damage here, so I'm not trying to make excuses. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe. You can even comment if you want to see more guides or commentary on Mythic Plus like this, maybe some raid commentary. Leave your wishes in the comments, like if you liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.